Iron Maiden and the Professor. Who's done more to bring young people to Coleridge's Ancient Mariner? Full disclosure, I'm the Professor and I'm not really into heavy metal. But I can say, without hesitation, that Iron Maiden have done far more for Coleridge than I've ever done or ever could hope to do. In 1984, on June the 23rd, the band released their fifth album, Powerslave. The final track on that album was The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, a 13-minute heavy metal adaptation of Coleridge's poem, first published in 1798. If you're not familiar with Iron Maiden, let me give you a little taste of what I'm talking about. First, though, we need to set the scene. The Ancient Mariner is the tale of a ship driven by bad weather into the ice of the Antarctic. An albatross tails the ship, bringing good fortune, and the ship makes its way northward through the ice and fog. Then, for no reason, the mariner, the Ancient Mariner, shoots and kills the albatross. The ship sails on until eventually the wind drops and the ship is becalmed, stuck motionless in the middle of the ocean. The crew blame the mariner and hang the albatross around his neck. Suddenly, a ghost ship appears, drawing closer and closer despite the lack of wind. It has only two crew members, Death and Life in Death, who throw dice for the crew of the mariner's ship. Life in Death wins the mariner, but Death takes all the others. Before dying, one after one, by the star-dogged moon, too quick for groan or sigh, each turned his face with a ghastly pang, and cursed me with his eye. Do you see what I mean? Do you see what they did with just a few chords and 6 short words? If you haven't already, go and watch the whole thing. Coleridge was onto something here. He's got a rattling good tale and a fine way with words.
It's true, he's right.
Iron Maiden took what Coleridge had and built on it. As I say, I'm not a heavy metal freak, but credit where credit is due. If the album was good, the live performances were, if anything, even better. More than a song, it became a piece of theatre, a tremendous recreation of the atmosphere of the original, so complex that when they took the show on the road, they needed some 50 roadies and 5 trucks to carry the equipment. They even loaded over 12 tons of equipment into a Boeing 747 jumbo jet, dubbed Air Force One, piloted by the band's lead vocalist, Bruce Dickinson, and flew it to concert destinations worldwide. Later on, the equipment grew to over 20 tons, and they had to get a new aeroplane. It wasn't all for the Ancient Mariner, of course, but a lot of it was. That's dedication. That's commitment. And it's on a scale no university professor could ever hope to match. What I want to look at, though, is the way the Iron Maiden version skillfully pieces the tale together using extracts from the poem itself, extracts from Coleridge's 1817 gloss on the poem, and sections adapted by Steve Harris, bass guitarist for the band and composer of this particular song. If you want to get serious about this, check the comments for the link to my Educational Hub website, where you'll find a page showing all of this in detail. Harris's opening line, "Hear the rime of the ancient mariner," has an immediacy that Coleridge's line, "It is an ancient mariner," doesn't. But that doesn't make Harris's line better than Coleridge's, it just makes it a better hook when you've got an audience of 50,000 headbangers, while Coleridge's line is more suited to a reader in an armchair, settling in comfortably to a yarn. Harris uses the same approach to good effect towards the end as well. Hear the groans of the long-dead seamen. It's not just vivid. This kind of repetition gives the song internal coherence, tying the narrative together, something we also see in the repeated on and on, scattered throughout the song and recurring in its final line. And the tale goes on and on and on and on. Not least, of course, in Iron Maiden's retelling of it. A lot of Harris's version is based on Coleridge's 1817 gloss of the poem, rather than on the poem itself. Lines like, "The mariner kills the bird of good omen. His shipmates cry against what he's done. But when the fog clears, they justify him and make themselves a part of the crime," are based not on the poem itself, but on the gloss. That's significant because the gloss is largely Coleridge's attempt to tame his own creation, to tone it down from the wild, morally ambiguous tale he'd written in his younger days, and frame it instead as a tale of Christian guilt, punishment, and redemption. It's fascinating that a heavy metal band goes for the more toned-down version of the older Coleridge rather than the random cruelty and hallucinatory nightmare of the original 1798 publication. And there are 2 points where Harris stands back from editing and paraphrase and simply lets Coleridge's words speak for themselves. The first is, "Day after day, day after day, we stuck, nor breath nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink." After the opening lines, these are probably the best-known lines in the entire poem. People who've never even heard of Coleridge would very likely recognise them. Including them in the song was a smart move, if only for their recognition value. And the second passage Harris reproduced line for line is "One after one, by the star-dogged moon, too quick for groan or sigh, each turned his face with a ghastly pang and cursed me with his eye." All right, that little bit that I read before with Iron Maiden's fantastic rendering of it. 4 times 50 living men, and I heard nor sigh nor groan. With heavy thump, a lifeless lump, they dropped down one by one. Unlike the first extract, which is sung to the accompaniment of a throbbing beat, the music softens to a gentle guitar melody, and these lines are delivered spoken rather than sung. There's a peculiar contrast in both passages between the method of delivery and the lexical content. The lines about the ship becalmed in the doldrums are delivered at a furious pace, while the horror of the crew members dying is recited against a calm, peaceful guitar melody. Amazingly, both extracts work perfectly. Rather than coming across as a mismatch, the contrast between content and delivery creates just the right mood of underlying menace that's needed to drive the narrative forward. In terms of the message of the poem, I've already said that Coleridge used the 1817 gloss to tone down the chaotic wildness of the original 1798 poem. He also made some significant revisions to the poem in the 1800 edition. And some of these changes were stylistic, getting rid of the self-consciously archaic language he'd used to give the text a medieval flavour. But by 1800, he's already backtracking on the Gothic horror of the original version and imposing a more Christian message of guilt and redemption. Harris's version takes that even further. In Coleridge's poem, the mariner's turning point is expressed in the lines, "A spring of love gushed from my heart, and I blessed them, unaware. Sure, my kind saint took pity on me, and I blessed them, unaware. Harris renders that as, and by the light of the moon he prays for their beauty, not doom. With heart he blesses them, God's creatures, all of them too. By dropping that word unaware and slipping in the reference to God, Harris develops the Christian message even more explicitly than Coleridge does. You could say he out-Coleridges Coleridge at this point. So, is that it? Does the professor of literature not have any criticisms of Iron Maiden's work? Surely there must be something. Well, it's not a criticism exactly, more of an observation. But yes, I do have a niggling reservation about Harris's version. It's the narrator. Coleridge begins and ends his poem with an authorial narrator talking about how the mariner approaches the wedding guest at the beginning and how he is changed into a sadder and wiser man after hearing his tale. But the main part of the poem is in the voice of the mariner himself. It really is the mariner's rhyme, the rhyme of the ancient mariner. Harris, by contrast, tells the whole story through the voice of an authorial narrator, slipping into the mariner's voice only where he quotes directly from the original poem. Essentially, Harris's version is a tale about the mariner, not by him. This cuts both ways. On the positive side, it creates the kind of grandeur that heavy metal thrives on. In Coleridge's poem, the mariner as narrator is tied to his own subjective experience, giving us an almost claustrophobic horror story, while Harris's omniscient narrator gives the story the massiveness of a legend, a cinematic adventure story. At the same time, though, we lose that sense of the mariner as an individual, telling the tale person to person with a kind of passionate urgency and more than a hint of madness. I can see why Harris changed the narratorial voice, and I think it's almost inevitable that he did so. The omniscient narrator suits the heavy metal medium much better than Coleridge's subjective narrator. But I feel the absence of the mariner's voice. Even that absence, though, is used to good effect, giving a particular power to the sections quoted directly from Coleridge's poem, where the mariner's voice does break through, fusing momentarily the authorial narrator, the subjective narrator, and Dickinson himself. So, there it is. Here's the old professor taking his hat off to Iron Maiden and saying, "Thank you for doing more to keep the spirit of romantic poetry alive than I ever could. But I can try. I can only strum the guitar, I can't really play it, and I don't have a band with all its resources. But I did subscribe to Suno, the AI music generator, and it came up with this.
Yellow and black and pale and hectic red.
That's an excerpt from a heavy metal rap version of Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. If you want the whole thing, click on the link. And here's a Shakespeare sonnet in reggae style.
Compare thee to a summer's day. Thou art more lovely and more temperate.
And This one is a reading of a poem by W.B. Yeats to a jazz background. That is no country for old men, the young in one another's arms, birds in the trees, those dying generations had their song. The salmon falls, the mackerel crowded seas, fish, flesh or fowl commend all summer long whatever is begotten, born and died. And I'll be making more like this, because we shouldn't be all ivory tower about literature. Quite the opposite. We need to get it down off the library shelf and give life to it, make it part of our world, our living tradition. Thank you for watching. If you're interested in more poetry videos, I've made hundreds of them. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications for new stuff, and check the playlists for evergreen oldies. If you want even more material, visit my Educational Hub website.